Hello, viewers of Jonathan George Villaria's World Emporium. I am Jonathan George Villaria, and I am excited to share with you how we can expand our knowledge of the world through the English language. Our videos cover a range of topics such as literature, history, science, and more to provide you with a well-rounded learning experience. Regardless of whether you are a beginner or an experienced learner, our experts and curious videos offer captivating, enlightening content to help you enhance your language proficiency. Darwin's theory, founded by Charles Darwin and colleagues like Thomas Huxley, posits that all species on this planet have appeared and evolved through the process of natural selection. Minor variations in genetic traits, if advantageous for an individual's survival and reproduction, are preserved and passed on to subsequent generations. This theory encompasses concepts of species variation and evolution, but gained prominence after Darwin published his book on the origin of species in 1859. The term Darwinism was coined by Thomas Henry Huxley in 1860. Evolution relies on fundamental principle as defined by Darwin. There's an overproduction of offspring in each generation, and only those individuals with genetically favorable traits for the new environment have a higher chance of survival. When these individuals reproduce and sometimes experience reproductive isolation, a new species may emerge. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution faced strong opposition from various sources, starting within the scientific community and spreading to different religious beliefs, particularly Christianity and Islam, as they saw the theory of evolution conflicting with the religious views of creationism. Evolution in the biological context is the process of genetic change in the population of organisms over generations. Evolution doesn't necessarily dictate a different goal, and complexity doesn't always increase over time. The complexity of an organism can change depending on the environment and the process of natural selection. In the 20th century, Darwin's theory of evolution was further developed with Mendelian genetics gaining acceptance due to new evidence and the rejection of other competing theories. There is a significant portion of the Western population, especially in the United States, that does not believe in the theory of evolution. A 2005 survey by the Pew Research Center in the U.S. showed that 63% of Americans supported the teaching of evolution in schools, but 38% rejected evolution and only supported teaching creationism as part of their religious beliefs. They perceive evolution as godless. This argument is often generalized as criticism that science is godless because naturalism relies on unproven methodology and is therefore faith-based, much like belief in the supernatural and divine in creationism. The theory of evolution proposed that life originated from natural processes such as the collision of organic and inorganic molecules. However, the probability of creating complex life through these processes is very low and is challenging to occur naturally. On the other hand, simple single-celled organisms do not evolve into complex multicellular organisms through mutation, but rather through a phenomenon called symbiosis, the transition from single-celled bacteria to larger, more complex cells, hundreds of times larger, is an aspect that the theory of evolution currently cannot fully explain. Darwin's, Darwin's real-life model, according to some researchers, does not accurately reflect reality, and a more complex model depicting the interconnection between species is now considered more accurate. Genetic studies in bacteria, plants, and animals have revealed complexity and gene exchange between different branches of evolution. Instead of simple inheritance, interconnection and complexity among species play a crucial role in the evolutionary process. Ernst Haeckel, a German biologist contemporary with Darwin, played a significant role in popularizing the theory of evolution, thanks to the fabricated illustrations. Darwin's theory of evolution became famous throughout Germany. He proposed the biogenetic law based on his illustrations, claiming that his drawings of human, ape, dog embryos demonstrated their common ancestry. However, the reality was quite different. Haeckel only drew single embryo and made slight alterations to create different images. He confessed and was convicted, but his admissions were covered up as early as the 20th century, and these fraudulent drawings began to be incorporated into textbooks as scientific truth. Although Haeckel's recapitulation theory was officially removed from textbooks, a small number of textbooks around the world still promoted Haeckel's fraudulent embryo drawings, which formed the basis of the theory, continued to be published widely. Louis Pasteur was a pioneering French scientist in microbiology and demonstrated the law of biogenesis. This law states that life can only arise from pre-existing life and cannot spontaneously generate. Pasteur asserted that microorganisms cannot appear without a source and do not come into existence without parents. This challenges the theory of evolution and remains a question without a scientific solution. The timeline of evolution raises many intriguing questions. According to the theory of evolution, humans evolved from ancient aquatic animals through a progression from amphibians, reptiles, mammals, then apes, and finally humans. This process spanned hundreds of millions of years. Biologists represent it through a chart showing the gradual development of life, from simplicity to complexity, from low to high. There, the Cambrian explosion, which marked the sudden appearance of most major animal phyla, about the Cambrian explosion, which marked the sudden appearance of most major animal phyla about 530 million years ago. This demonstrated by fossils is a notable event in the history of life. Prior to this, most organisms were simple. In a short span of 70 to 80 million years, the rate of evolution increased significantly. The rapid appearance of joint-legged animals during the Cambrian posed a challenge to the theory of evolution, contrasting with Darwin's views of gradual and prolonged evolution. The genetic similarity between humans and apes has been re-evaluated. Initially, it was thought that human and ape DNA were about 90% identical, but more recent research has showed that this figure is closer to 93%. This significant difference reflects substantial variations in body structure, brain, intelligence, and behavior between the two species. Comparative anatomy fossils of ancient organisms, one of the three key pieces of evidence for the theory of evolution. It often used to support this theory. It suggests that some bone structures in mammals, such as the mouse claw, the bat's wing, the seal tail, and the human hand, share similar structures. Darwin proposed that they share common ancestors and evolved over time under the influence of the environment, resulting in different forms. The absence of intermediate links in the fossil record led Charles Darwin to raise strong questions about why a large number of intermediate forms that once existed on Earth could have been found in the geological strata. Information is not material but can be transmitted through material. There is no evidence to suggest that information can evolve, improve through mutations. Copy errors or point mutations occur at very low frequencies in human DNA, with each DNA strand containing billions of genetic characters. DNA holds a vast amount of information, and it is impossible to believe that random evolution could create it. Scientists have observed that the complex arrangement of DNA requires the intervention of an intelligent consciousness to function. During Charles Darwin's time, understanding of biology and evolution was in its early stages. Observation of variations within domesticated animal species had spurred the idea that species could evolve from one another. As genetics research developed and delved deeper, scientists realized that fundamental changes in genes were crucial in driving evolution, and gene mutations became an essential component of the theory of evolution. However, the stability of genes is an essential factor in maintaining the natural stability of species. Genes can change to adapt to the environment, but one species cannot transform into an entirely different species. Experimental animal breeding programs have demonstrated the limitation of variation within a species. This raises a critical issue. The theory of evolution relies on the possibility of genetic breakthroughs to overcome these barriers, which is a crucial aspect of the theory. However, there are fundamental challenges that make this process difficult. The probability of genetic mutation, the phenomenon of random genetic changes during recombination or gene repair, is very low in nature. This probability depends on the species and the specific gene, ranging from 1,000th in arthropods to 1/10,000th to 100th of 1 millionth in higher animals. But the key question is whether genetic mutations can create survival advantages. In reality, the majority of genetic mutations lead to defects or deformities, often providing no benefit for survival. Chromosomes contain thousands of genes, and altering one or two genes can create more complex sequences, but it doesn't always confer a survival advantage. Therefore, creating advanced traits through genetic mutation is incredibly challenging and rarely occurs in nature. The three steps of observation, hypothesis, and verification have always been the foundation of establishing the laws of nature and scientific theories. However, in Darwin's on the origin of species, only the first two steps were completed. Even after more than a century of sustained efforts, spanning generations, the final step, verification, has not brought about absolute confidence from humanity. Furthermore, with the development of modern scientific views and the complexity of the theory of evolution, the final evidence to complete these three steps seem to become more elusive than ever. There is a growing number of scientists, scholars, members of scientific academies, and Nobel laureates who no longer believe in the theory of evolution. This is in- inevitable because the scientific knowledge of the 21st century has exposed the flaws in the primitive scientific views of Darwin's 19th century. In the debate over evolution, many perspectives and beliefs have emerged, and this diversity reflects the complexity of the discussion about the origins and development of life. While the theory of evolution is a strongly supported theory in science and has helped us gain a deeper understanding of change in the living world, there are still many who do not accept it. This debate is often influenced by religious, educational, and personal beliefs, while some segments of society believe in the theory of evolution, others do not, creating a divide in views on the evolution of humanity. This diversity is a natural part of the world today and highlights the importance of the discussion and research related to evolution. Thank you for joining me at this episode. Your questions, comments, and feedback are always welcome and appreciated. So please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting and enlightening content. By hitting the notification bell, you'll be sure to never miss any of our exciting and thought-provoking episodes. Don't forget to share our channel with your friends and family who may also find our content beneficial. We are committed to providing you with high-quality, well-researched, and engaging content that will help you improve your English language skills and expand your knowledge. And I look forward to sharing more insightful and inspiring things with you in the near future.